Alright, so we're going to talk about creating a depth pass for this picture. So essentially the process of creating a depth pass is it's kind of similar to what I explained in Nuke 3.3, what a depth pass is. It's really just distance from the camera. So that's what a depth pass is. It's basically 0 or black. So if you look on the edge here, it's black. So if we sample it, the alpha is 0. That's the closest to the camera, and the furthest thing away is 100%, so 1. So 0 to 1 is this range of brightness that we can basically measure the Z distance from the camera. So if we gamma that down, we see that that fades away in the direction of Z, which is away from the camera. So that's essentially what we need to be able to build out. And there's 2 ways of doing this, and the way I did it, because this is a still image, I just used roto shapes. So essentially what you do is, if I take the original picture here, I'll grab the original picture, grab the reformat, and just bring it down here. And we don't need to necessarily do this as a practical exercise. I think you guys would pick it up pretty quick of me just showing it, but it's a good technique to know about. That you can do. So essentially what you want to do is basically we have to roto everything, and I'm not going to do that in this lesson, but I'll show you just a couple just to show you how to build a simple depth map. So if we take a roto shape, instead of starting with a roto shape, we'll start with a constant, and we'll set the value of that constant to 1 and set that to RGBA as well. So that's going to be our furthest away color. So we're going to start and this is kind of the background. So what we want to do is each consecutive shape that's closer to us, we actually have to roto each one of those things. So for example, I'm going to merge this over this, and I'm going to mask, I'm going to create another constant, and I'm going to put the value to 0.9. So that means this is going to be slightly closer to us. And if it doesn't make sense yet, just hold on for 1 second. You'll see what I'm talking about. So essentially I'm going to mask that 0.9 white by a roto shape. And for the roto shape, I'm going to draw this building back here. Or actually the furthest away building. So we'll do this building, the skyscraper that we can see is very, very far back there. So I'm going to draw where that skyscraper is, and we'll see that that's a mask. So we see that that is the shape of the skyscraper, and we merge that over the top of our pure white, so the value of 1 picture. And now if we gamma down all the way, make sure 1 second here. So we're missing one thing. Let's just make sure we have, if we go to the color wheel here, make sure the alpha is set to 1. So we have 0.9 for all the values, but our alpha always needs to be at 1. So it's a solid, there's no transparency. So now that we have that result, if we merge this over the top, we just go to the normal exposure, we should see that there's kind of a darker sort of shape over our white. So if we sample it, we'll have 0.9, and we'll sample the further one, and we have a solid value of 1. So this is essentially how we're going to start to build our depth map of distance. So darker objects are closer to us. So we'll go here, we'll do another layer. So we'll just copy this, and we'll stack it just on top there, and we'll set the value to 0.8 on all the channels. So 0.8, 0.8, 0.8, and merge that over, and instead of the roto shape being on this building, we'll just take that roto shape, and I'll delete it and then make a new shape. I think this is the next closest building, so we're going to take a shape and just roto this real quick. So go here, go around the edges, and just sort of get this shape in there. And you can be kind of sloppy around if it's not seen, so I can just kind of cut it up like that. And now we have this. So we have this darker, and then lighter, and then the very lightest, it's a sky. And we'll just continue to do this. So copy this, paste it. Maybe we'll set this, let's see. This looks like it's across the alleyway, so maybe the next closest thing would be actually this storefront. So we go here, delete that shape, set it to this storefront. Well, maybe we'll set the value to 0.75. Maybe the distance is not as big. So 0.75, 0.75, and we'll merge that over the top. So now if we start to gamma down, you see how it's starting to fade across the distance, like our depth map. And this is essentially how I built the main depth map for our scene. So I'll copy this, do it again. So the one that is a little bit trickier is surfaces that aren't so planar. So these are kind of easy because they're just like flat background buildings almost. But we have this, like, for example, this whole wall that's like totally different distances. Like this is very different spot than the one at the end of the wall. So essentially what we need to do for something like that would be, if I create a rotoshape, let me delete this. We need to go in here and roto the wall, but we need to give it a gradient value so that it fades off. So I'm gonna roto the side of this wall, and of course every single one of these lamps you'd have to roto as well. So this is a time-consuming process to do, but if you have a depth map, it really helps. I think this wall kind of goes here. It's kind of hard to tell exactly what this is, but I'm just gonna kind of roughly do it. And see, like, so for each object that's standing out on the wall, you'd have to roto that independently. So I'll show you what I did, but let's just do the gradient thing first. So I'll show you how to do that. So I'm gonna cut it at the end of the wall and then cut it back, something like this. And we'll start the starting value at, so we know that this end of the wall is a little bit closer to us than this storefront. So I'll set the value to, let's say, 0.65. 0.65. So it's like this. So it's a little bit darker. And then we need to fade that off into black. So up at the front, it needs to be really dark. So all we need to do is take a ramp, take a grade node, and plug the mask into the ramp, and then plug the grade node into the constant. And we'll set the 1 value at the start here, and the 0 value at the end, and we'll just rotate that so it matches our perspective a little bit. And now if we darken, we essentially want to make this value close to 0. So if I put the sampler here, I want to make it that value basically almost 0, so like that. So now if I take my gamma and I go down, you see how it follows the distance that we've created. So now what we need to do is same thing for the ground plane. We would have to create a ground plane and the other wall, and then we need to make gradients that match this gradient for all of those. And I'll just show you one more thing, and that is, like, if there's an object sort of in the middle and we don't know how to do it, we can do it this way. So I'll just copy this, paste it here. And so, like, let's say I don't know what number, if I'm looking at this, you know, I want to put this object in our depth map, this one that's sort of in the middle here. What I do is I go to our depth map that we've created, and since I've already got the gradient wall, I can figure out the correct depth for this light. So basically what I want to do is take the sample and sample, let me make sure I have the roto off. What I want to do is find this on the picture and then sample nearby. So we see that the value, because we've already created the gradient, is about 0.49. So for this new shape that I'm creating, I'll set the values to 0.49, 0.49, 0.49. And then for the roto shape that's masking that 0.49 value, we'll just draw a real quick roto of this pole. So I'll just do this really, really rough because, you know, this is just for an example. So I'm not going to spend time. If you're actually doing this, you want to go around each one of these cubes and do it properly, but I'm just showing you real quick a real rough roto just to get the example across. So now that we have that and we merge that over, we'll see that that feels like it's in the right position. So if we gamma down, you see how this is dark and it's also dark next to the wall that it's on. So we know that that's the correct value. And if you see that there's a difference, like if it's a little bit brighter next to it, maybe you just take a gamma and just slightly adjust it so it blends into the wall that it's on. And that's how you do it. So you need to do that for every single object that you think needs to be in that depth map. And the level of accuracy doesn't have to be perfect for this. So this is the one that I created. So if you zoom down, you see there's different objects at different depths, and we also have all those wires and everything like that. So that's a time-consuming process to create that. One of the things I did to help, instead of rotoing every single thing, was like this wires. Essentially what I did was I just Luma keyed them. So I just took the original scene, I keyed them out with a Luma keyer, and I inverted that mat so I could just get all those wires as an alpha. And then essentially I took that mat and just put it through a constant, just like we did before, as we've been doing. And then I set the depth close to where they are in the depth. So essentially that's what I've done. And we can see that some of these wires are probably at different depths. So this is not like a perfect depth map. If you wanted to make it perfect, you could rotoscope each one of these wires independently and grade them differently. But in the end, in the shot that we're doing, it's not gonna be that visible if it's not perfect. And if I gamma down, you know, it works pretty well. We see that it kind of fades off, and it works good enough for what we're using it for. So that's essentially how we can create this depth map, and I'll show you guys how to use it in the next lesson. I'll show you one more way to create this depth map, and you might be wondering, well, this is great for like a static scene, but how do I do this for a moving scene? How can I create a depth map? Well, we've already done it, sort of. If we go back to basically our model builded scene, and we look at what we've created here, you can actually, so this is the scene that we created with the cubes and the little doorway here. Yeah, if your camera was moving and you had an animated camera and you model out this geometry, you can shuffle out that depth map. So if we go to shuffle and then switch it to depth, and if we look at this, we should see, let's make sure that we have this activated here. If I switch to depth, alpha depth, so yeah, so if we look at the depth channel and we gain up here, we see that there's this red color, and if we sample the end, you see that it's 0.00030, and then we sample the start 0.00199. So this is the depth. So if I shuffle that out into the RGB, and then we just brighten it up a bit, let's just shuffle the depth Z into the alpha channel. So if I go to the alpha channel, you'll see that depth map stored there now, if you brighten up like crazy. And essentially what you can do with that, if you switch this to RGBA, my nuke is glitching here a little bit, switch this to RGBA, you can adjust that white and black point as we normally would, as I taught in Nuke 303. So you can adjust that black point, and we can use that to create fog or other various effects based on distance. So that's how you can do it with a moving scene. Basically, you'd have to model everything out as accurately as you possibly can, and place that over the scene. So we'd want to model all the doors, all the signs, everything, and try to get it super accurate. So it's not easy to do, but that's how you would do it. And yeah, we can start to get into how to use these depth maps on a matte painting sort of thing like this.